Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our session. I'm so grateful to have you grace our session tonight. Thank you so much for being here. For today's session, I am going to be continuing from a series of the sessions when we started with improving. How do we improve our problem solving skills? And for today, I will be moving to the second part in terms of how do we now find solutions when we have identified our problems. So in the first session that we did, we spoke about how do we identify problems, also how do we respond to problems. And I also shared two techniques that we can use in terms of identifying our problems. And now that you have identified a problem, the question is, what do you do with the problem? So for today's session, I will be speaking about, how many solutions have you explored, and also sharing with you some of the mindsets that we need when we are exploring the solution space. So how do we approach problems? So the majority of us, in terms of how we approach problems, is that we see a problem and then we just come up with a solution, right? And then once we have come up with the solution, we run with it. So we get married to the solution and not the problem itself. And the challenge with getting married to a solution is that once you have the solution and you have invested so much into it, it can be a challenge, and it's not easy for you to let go when you have invested your time, when you have invested your money, when you have invested your resources. So I want us to move from the idea of getting married with the solution from early on, but rather how do we get married to the problem? So this is one of the ideas that we shared in the last session. So with the last session, one of the things that we did was we actually did we had a interviews with a couple of people, and we asked them to share one problem that they were currently experiencing. And through that pool, these were some of the responses that came through. We had people who said their problem is around not having employment at the moment. Some it was around the lack of money. Some it was, problems within the relationship itself, and some it was problems that had to do with schooling and finances. And what we shared as some of the techniques of identifying problems. So the first technique that we shared was around asking questions. So the purpose of asking questions is so that we can uncover the actual problem that you're experiencing. So one of the participants shared with us that the problem that they were currently experiencing was around no job. So no job, when you look at it, it's not actually a problem, but it's something that they wish could solve a problem which yet we haven't identified, right? So a job is something they wish they can have, which will be solving a deeper problem that we haven't yet uncovered. So through asking questions, we started uncovering what is the actual problem. So we asked them around, why is not having a job a problem? And they responded by saying, because I can't do things for myself and for my kids. So why do you think a job will do for you and your children? Because I will have a stable income. And through that, we were able to understand that actually this person's problem is not around not having a job, but this person's problem is around them being able to provide for their children and for themselves. So the second part with regards to problem solving is around reframing your problem, right? So now that you have uncovered the actual problem, so now you want to get to a place where you reframe the problem. And the purpose of reframing the problem is that it gives you an opportunity to explore other opportunities. So when you have reframed your problem, you are in a better position to you're in a better position where your mind is opened enough to see other possibilities that were not previously available, or were not previously very clear to you from the beginning. So if you look at the initial problem that this person shared with us was around they don't have a job, right? And when we started asking questions, we started uncovering the actual problem, which was around I'm not able to provide for my children in a way that I want because currently I don't have a source of income, right? So once we understand that this is the actual problem, we reframed that problem to how might I generate a source of income for myself and children in the meantime? So when you now have understood the problem, when you reframe the problem, now your mind is opened up to these new possibilities that were not necessarily available, but were not present to us in the beginning. So I want us to move into the part where now you have identified the problem, you have reframed the problem. So what do you do with that reframed problem statement? And now it's time for us to move into the solution space in terms of how do we now uncover solutions when we have already identified a problem. So if you look at this blue box there, so this is what we call a tangram puzzle. So a tangram puzzle is a Chinese puzzle that consists of 7 pieces, right? And you can actually create close to 256 shapes with those 7 pieces. But this is how we come up with solutions. We have identified a problem, then we build one shape, and we believe that this one shape is the solution to our problem. However, we don't realize that actually we have 255 shapes that we haven't explored yet if it happens that this one solution doesn't work. So always remember that you have 256 possibilities to this one problem that you have. And I am going to show you with regards to how do you now uncover these 256 possibilities that you have. So we have the thing, so there is this, so in terms of us being able to uncover this 256 possibilities, we are going to use what we call the heartbeat of creativity. So the heartbeat of creativity is what we call divergent thinking and convergent thinking. So divergent thinking, that is where now we are coming up with a multitude of possibilities. That is where now we are generating lots of ideas. That is where we are expanding, and that is where we are stretching for wild and unusual possibilities, right? And then when we converge, that is where now we are narrowing down our possibilities. That is where we are focusing on a few options and selecting the best idea. So for us to be in a position where now we are coming up with multitude of ideas and possibilities, we need to allow ourselves the creativity, or we need to allow ourselves the space or the room to be creative without judging how we view things, right? So we need to be in a position where we explore these possibilities without judging how we think, right? So that is called divergent thinking. So divergent thinking, it's about you have explored all these possibilities and now you have all these different ideas that you can explore. So for example, we spoke about the the problem that we had initially identified. And with that problem, we had rephrased the problem to how might I generate a source of income for myself and children in the meantime. So when we get into the divergent thinking, these are some of the possible ideas that one can come up with. You can either start a business, you can apply for work, you can care for babies, you can walk your neighbor's dogs, you can wash people's cars. So the whole point of divergent thinking is that don't judge your ideas. Just come up with as many ideas as possible. So you don't want to do this two thinking at the same time. You want to start with the divergent thinking where you're coming up with all the ideas. And once you have come up with all the ideas, then you look at all those ideas and you start thinking around, okay, which of these ideas do I think is the most plausible idea to move forward with? And for example, in this instance, perhaps maybe they can say, I will care for babies because it's something that it's easy for me to do. There's babies around in my community, and there are people who are looking for people to care for the babies. So this is how now you start converging. But also remembering that just converging to this idea, it doesn't make other ideas redundant, right? If this idea doesn't work, you can still go back and explore some of the ideas that you left behind. So that is how we practice the heartbeat of creativity, which is divergent thinking and convergent thinking. So for this activity, I want you to start practicing that divergent thinking and convergent thinking. So I want to expand ourselves with convergent thinking. So one way to do that is that I want you to think of a way. I see the hi Nkululego. How are you, Nkululego?
Hi, yes.
How are you? Hi, Nkululego.
Hi.
How are you? Can you hear me?
So bad.
Okay, so I think I will continue. So at this point is that I want to, okay, so Nonkulego, at this point, I know that you just came in now. So I was speaking around, how do we start uncovering solutions? And one way to do that is to use the mindset that we call divergent thinking and convergent thinking. And convergent thinking, it's a way in terms of how do we come up with a multitude of ideas, and convert and divergent thinking, that's where now you start selecting an idea based on all these multiple ideas that you have come up with. And for us to actually start practicing that kind of mindset, it takes training. A lot of us, we come from a background and educational systems where we are taught that there's only one answer to this problem. We are never put in a space where we are taught to explore possibilities, where we are taught to think outside the box, but rather we are given a question and we're expected to come up with an answer. So for us to get to a space where we practice this convergent thinking, it will take training. And one way for us to do that is to just look at some of the objects that you own in the house. And for example, now it's just look at this pen, think of what 5 ways that you can use a pen besides writing. So you just grab a pen and paper and then start thinking of 5 ways that you can use a pen besides writing. Are you with me, Nonkulego?
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay, so maybe just grab a pen and paper and then for a minute, 60 seconds, let's start thinking around what other ways, think of ways that you can use a pen and paper, you can use a pen besides writing. I'll just set my timer to 60 seconds. So just think of ways that you can use a pen besides writing.
How can you use a pen besides
Pen, yeah.
writing?
So what other ways can you think of
Right.
using a pen besides writing?
Right.
Yeah, because that is the ultimate purpose of using a pen, right? Is that we use it for writing. So,
Right.
so you have a 60 seconds. You have less than 60 seconds. I see Paulina has joined us. Paulina, how are you? How are you, Paulina? Okay, so Paulina, if you are listening, one of the things that we are currently doing is that we are figuring out 5 ways to use a pen besides writing. So just look at a pen, grab a pen and paper, and think of ways you can actually use a pen besides writing. Okay, maybe let's hear from you, Nonkulego. What are some of the ideas that you managed to come up with? Maybe let me start with asking how many did you manage to come
Well,
how many did you manage to come up with?
well, a few.
What is a few? What is a few? What is the
The
number?
first is okay. A few is two.
Okay, you can share.
Okay, the first is I can use it as a straw, right?
Okay, yes.
And the second one would be to unlock a bike lock.
Okay, that's nice.
Yeah.
Okay, at least we have two. Palena, did you manage to come up with any ideas around how you can use a pen besides writing?
I'm sorry, I didn't. Just logged in now. Had some trouble logging.
Okay, maybe let me ask you from the question here. So maybe just give me two ways you can use a pen besides writing. So from Nonkulego we have she can use it as a straw, she can unlock a bike, use it as a something to unlock a bike. Maybe if you can share two ideas that are just popping out from your head, anything? Or even just one
Besides
idea.
writing, um, use it to stretch my hair.
Scratch my hair. Actually, that was an idea that I
Yes.
also had. And I had one around. I will use it as a necklace. I don't know how, but that just came up. And I will also use it to stir my tea, which is almost similar to a straw, the idea that Nonkulego had. And this is an activity to kind of help us to start getting into that creative space. It's a matter of looking at some of the objects around you and seeing in terms of okay, this object, we have been using it this way. What other ways can I actually use it for? You look at your toothbrush, it was created for you to brush your teeth, but once you start thinking around, how can I use this toothbrush besides brushing my teeth? And then that's how you start practicing that way of thinking, which is the convergent thinking, where you're coming up with ideas. And the whole purpose of this is that don't judge the ideas that you come up with. The idea is not to judge them, but the idea is for you to populate your mind with regards to all the ideas. And then once you have an idea, then you can start making a selection to the idea that you want to move forward with. So this is where I will close it off for today. So one of the things that I shared was around, what problem are you currently experiencing? I shared two techniques in terms of how you can actually solve problems. So you have identified a problem. How do you now understand what is this problem? So the first thing I said, you ask open-ended question. I shared around, we did a study where someone answered around, no job being a problem for them. And once we started asking open-ended question in terms of why is you not having a job a problem, we started to uncover the actual problem. So when you look at no job is not a problem, but it's something that they wish they could have, right? But once we started asking questions, we started to uncover actually this person's no job is not the problem, but the problem is around them not being in a position to provide for themselves and their children. And once we were able to identify, okay, the problem is they're not able to provide for themselves and their children, we reframed that problem in a way that it allowed us to actually now start thinking outside the box. So let me just go back so that you guys can see. So this is how we reframe the problem. How might I generate a source of income for myself and children in the meantime? So this kind of question actually allows you to open up your mind, where else when we said no job is a problem, your mind is closed off and you can't see other possibilities. But once you start asking questions and you reframe that problem, you start now getting into a position where you start to see other possibilities that were not perhaps visible to you in the beginning. And then once you have identified the problem, now you move into the second part where now you are uncovering the solutions to your problem. One way is to generate lots of ideas to your actual problem. So one way we did this is, once you have uncovered that actually my problem is around not being to generate a source of income for myself and children in the meantime, then you start coming up with ideas. As I said, the main purpose is not to judge your ideas, but to come up with as many ideas as possible. And once you have identified the problem, then you select the most plausible idea or solution that you think would be of benefit or of use for you in the meantime. It doesn't mean all the ideas that you leave behind are useless. It just means that you want to try this one for now. If it happens that the idea that you have tried doesn't work, you can still go back and explore some of the ideas that you have left behind. So this is our session for today with regards to how can one actually uncover some of the solutions. But before I close, I want to leave you guys with this video here. I hope it does play. Okay.
I think if you're serious, you try to make a change. If you don't like a situation, you try to change it. Do whatever you can to change it. And if everything you do falls flat, and you can't change it, then change the way you think about it. Move to another position to look at it. In doing so, you may find a new way to change it.
Thank you, team. And that is it for us for today. Nonkulego, for those of you who have missed out on our session, so Nonkulego, you can actually get the first session of this, the first part of this session, which is around improving your problem solving skills. It's on YouTube. You can find it on Tebo Hochaka, and then you can look at the first part of this session, and I will also be sharing this one as well on YouTube. Perhaps maybe do you guys have any questions around what you have had so far? Any questions from you, Nonkulego?
No, personally, I'd say this has helped me. The session has helped me with really thinking of more than one way to a problem. I now understand and know that I have to think of other options as well in order to solve a problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.